Hey, welcome back. We're going to have a couple guests on today. We're going to talk on Husky Talk today. We're going to talk a little bit about NIL branding, the football program, the sports program as a whole, and really get an understanding and feel for more of the landscape with respect to college sports and the branding aspect of it, because that's really radically changing. And we'll have Steve Cully on, and then we'll have a little bit later on the show, we'll have Kyle Muncy on, Brandon NIL manager from director from Uconn, who's been there for a long time back when and I was playing there. So right now I'm going to go do my best Colin Cowherd, running a real solo until we get our guests on. But the branding and NIL, and how universities are handling branding with respect to college sports is rapidly changing, and everyone in the landscape is really trying to develop themselves in like influencer type program with respect to branding and NIL. And it goes from two sides of it. There's the university side, which has its own brand with respect to sports, and then it's the athlete side, which are developing their brands. Some of them are a brand if they're a 4 or 5 star recruit or a top level player, or if they have a large following on Instagram or TikTok or YouTube. And I've seen it myself in the different areas that I've built up over the years with Twitter. At one point being 1 million followers, and then they did the whole purge and we're down to 580 because they were getting rid of all the bots that were following people. 580,000 we're talking. And then, built up our Instagram, had tons of interaction. Then as that algorithm changed, we moved away to a little bit from using Instagram as much to more using Twitter for recruiting, for helping athletes get recruited, those kind of things. And then now we're using YouTube because YouTube with shorts, with the long form content, we're combining both the long form content and the short form content to really develop a brand with respect around sports, and then obviously also football as well. And there's a cultivation of that, and universities now are really starting to try to figure out how to do that. And that goes from the Division I level all the way down to the Division III level and beyond, to even like JUCO and high school, where everyone's starting to develop a brand and leveraging them. And we'll talk about that a little bit later of how Uconn is handling that. And one of the things that I think is really important is every university and possibly the individual athletes have to develop a level of brand that combines both their on-field performance, okay, what they're actually doing and highlighting what they're doing and doing it really well, which means behind the scenes preparation, and their offline or their off the field performance, which may be social media, maybe pure media, press, those kind of things, developing their own brand, and then figuring out financial leverages that they have within the industry, within business, within sports, to be able to build their brand. And you can look at just what with the EA Sports bringing back NCAA college football and the explosion where they expected, I think I read, if they had made 150 million from NCAA college football coming back for NCAA 25, that would have been a windfall for EA Sports. And because of the branding and because they signed the athletes on board to that, and then I'm sure, I don't know the exact deal that the athletes got with it. There may have been some that got more. Like I saw Shedeur Sanders playing it with Travis Hunter, in order to get them to play those games or promote it. They're paying those guys more. I don't remember what they got exactly, but you're probably talking 50 to 100K just to do that, to play that game. So to bring in the fans. My son, watched them play college football. He plays that game as a 9-year-old and enjoys it, right? And so the branding aspect of your university, where you're ranked in the EA Sports college football game, is branding for recruits. This is why your overall branding and how you're doing on the field is just as important as is more important than what you're doing off the field, but off the field complements that. So EA Sports, they thought $150 million would be a huge windfall for them. And they've already done over $500 million just from game sales for EA Sports college football. So now you got to think about that. So, it's called the Husky Huddle, and we talk about the Husky Huddle here, and we're talking about, and I want to I want to change my image here because I don't know why I put. There we go. Oh yeah, there it is. So the Husky Huddle, we want to make sure that we talk about what is going on with respect to Uconn, with respect to everything from football to sports here. And, NIL and branding is such a big thing with respect to sports and bringing in the recruits. So basketball, getting Danny Hurley to come in and do well and win back-to-back championships, and them getting the players over to be able to come on board. They did the NIL deals for a couple of their top players that ended up coming, the player that transferred from Rutgers to them. Those are all the kind of things that have to be done. And there's articles 3 weeks ago, the Hartford Courant just talked about, there's a course now at Uconn on lessons of building a brand, creating content, and more empowering student athletes and NIL ventures. I mean, that's a big thing, but it's not just on the branding. Is you got Learfield, and you have which, and then IMG, which are all big involved in that aspect. But the university itself has to have a declared plan for their sports and their overall athletic department, because the university has a certain brand, okay? But what changes is the branding of the school with respect to sports. So how good the sports teams are is a brand for you as an athletic program. How good your teams are, Uconn being known for basketball, is a brand for basketball for Uconn. That's a big, big deal. And that's men's and women's basketball, which have won multiple national championships. Uconn being branded as a basketball brand, that brings in recruits. Those recruits then develop an NIL program. Uconn has a decent NIL program for basketball to be able to help those guys be successful. Their coaches do really well. Their team does really well. And now they're getting their recruits. But football is a different animal with respect to branding and NIL. And the conference you're in is branding. How you approach the level of teams you play is branding. The level of recruits that you are getting, the type of coach you have, and your willingness to put yourself out there in that space is a huge component of branding and NIL. And if your university, Uconn is starting to build this thing, but this is an arms race, and places like Uconn have to be able to be great from imaging standpoint, from video, interesting video, talking not just about what the players can do on the field, and not just diving into their personal lives, but also being willing to do stuff that is different. And I think that's an important part to branding yourself. And then also the on-the-field performance. What are we doing to get the very best players in there, to develop the very best players in football, and to be able to help them leverage their brand to be successful? And that's part of, there's a capital raising component that's huge with respect to this in branding and football. There's a component to, and that has to literally be an athletic director, all the competencies that are around the athletic director in the university reaching out to be able to develop it. But branding and NIL is a huge area that has to continue to be built out and have a strategic plan of how they're going to go about and do that. And Uconn football in particular, because you have a brand with basketball already, Uconn football in particular has to develop whatever that branding is going to be, whatever that branding type of football they are. They've got to be able to do that. And then the athletic department has to be able to leverage that for the university, and the individual athletes have to be able to leverage that. And that goes to the sports game. So it goes to recruiting, right? If you're playing EA Sports college football and your team is rated as a 90 overall, that's branding for your team. That brings NIL for your players. The first thing every young kid wants to know is, what is your overall rating on college football? Are you a 90? Are you a 95? Are you a 70? Right? Those are big deal. You want people to leverage your brand. You want them to choose your team when they're playing. You want that team to be rated higher. It sounds crazy, but that is the reality for recruits. What are high school players doing in their spare time? The head coach of Princeton, Bob Saray, said it best. I was talking about how my son plays EA Sports college football, and he built the player, and the players got all these offers. He chose to send his player to Nebraska. Then after the player rushed for 1,500 yards, he then transferred his player to Colorado, and the Colorado and mythical Deion Sanders decided to move his player to wide receiver, where he had a bunch of catches, and but he was not happy with his player playing receiver. He wanted his player to carry the ball and be a running back. So he transferred his kid to another school, right? And it was Ohio State, I think it was, and they went to the national championship, right? So that's the things that players are doing now. You want your players that come for your pool, that want to come to your school, you want them playing EA Sports and choosing your team. And by the way, one of our first guests is here now. We'll bring him on. Hey, what's going on, Steve?
Hey, how are you, sir?
Good.
Sorry.
Nice big coffee right down there in the middle. I was just talking about, talking a little bit about Uconn sports, but I was talking a lot about how important the brand and understanding the different brands are with respect as far as competencies within your athletic department program, right? And it's such a big thing now, right? So the university has a brand, right? Uconn has a brand. The basketball team, women and men's at Uconn, for example, have a gigantic brand, right? All right. Without let's take imaging and all that kind of stuff out. Without imaging, without their success on the field, and I'm saying performance on the field is the number one thing that helps your overall university brand, but they coincide, right? And then there's the off the field part for your university. Like, how do you promote what you're doing well? So whereas football has a completely different brand right now within the same university, and how they have to work to promote whatever that edge is that they do have. They have to promote that, right? And they have to figure out imaging wise what they have to do. Whereas, if you're men's basketball at Uconn, you could simply put up a Bobby Hurley and a team holding the national champion. That is your brand, right? Whereas football is going to have to do something different. Field hockey, maybe they have a young woman that's an influencer that has followers. That's part of your brand. And then the individual side is a huge component of these things. So your individual players taking ownership of not just their brand from a financial standpoint, because that obviously is what comes down the line, but taking control of their brand because their brand is their image, right? And then let's take money out of it because a lot of them may not go to the NFL, but their brand will carry with them whatever their brand is. Steve Cully has a brand. Dave Schuman, the Coach Schuman brand. Listen, I haven't coached high school football this will be the fourth year that I haven't coached high school football. But because my brand is Coach Schuman for so long, everyone feels free coach, right? I'm not.
That's how you're recognized.
Right. So that becomes your brand. Now, how do you leverage that in positive capacities is a really, really big deal. So, and I think those things, those are all a strategic plan from the top. How do we do this? How do we leverage it? How do we build up each one of these silos with each sport, right? Each sport's a silo. And I think about it, what's hard for not just UConn, but any university. I mean, Alabama has different things that they have to deal with, right, than what UConn has to deal with. But each sport is a silo, right? And within that silo, there are many different things on there. There's a roster of players. There's a coach. There's the branding within that sport. There's the video team. And each one of those silos, you got to cut across your silos, right? So you have a concerted image that you're trying to get across. At the same time, you're addressing each silo's individual needs. Basketball's individual needs are a little different than football's or field hockey's or swimming, right? And it's all about developing that overall university image, but also those individuals and the people within those silos developing their on the field performance play, which is so important. Obviously, that's the most important, because if you win championships, okay, your branding's a little easier, right?
Exactly.
But if you're on the road to try and build something, how do you take those steps to get to that point? You have to maybe have a little bit more on the branding side until you get to the point where you're there from an on the field standpoint. And then you're hiring. I can't emphasize how much hiring that the hiring of Dan Hurley, as it turns out,
changed everything.
Right? And it's some of those things you don't always know, right? But you could see Dan Hurley. He was successful each step below. St. Benedict's, Rhode Island. I can't remember where he was before Rhode Island. But each step along, Wagner, that's what it was. Wagner, Rhode Island, Uconn, right? Each step along the way, he showed
he had
tremendous level of success. And Rhode Island
moved up.
Yep, that's how he moved up. And the coach, I can't think of the name of the coach, but before he had won a national championship at UCLA, he was at Rhode Island and built.
Oh, the URI coach, yeah.
Jim
something. I remember his name.
Yep, remember that he went out to UCLA. So I think those are that was obviously Gino Ariema has been there for a long time. He's been a home run for a long time, but they're in a different phase. They're in a maturity phase of the women's program where they're trying to figure out how to marry the imaging, and that's where the individual like Paige Beckers has been so important. Paige Beckers has been so important to the overall imaging, and in this year in particular, Nika Mule was very important to the imaging of UConn, right? Because
Mule was huge.
Not just her on the field play, but she's a good-looking girl, right? And all that stuff played into it. She had that next door girl, good looks. At the same time, she was like tough as nails point guard, right? So it was kind of a unique brand. She leveraged it. Paige Beckers leveraged not just her on the field brand, but her personality and how she is. And she's also a pretty girl, and all those kind of things played into it. So as Gino Ariema's brand is this old school coach who built the program. Now he's considered an old school coach. Originally, his ways were very right. So, but an old school coach who believes in certain values. He has these hardcore values that he expects from his players, right? And then you have Paige Beckers and Nika Mule, who exemplify his values from a hard work standpoint, UConn basketball standpoint. At the same time, they're considered cool.
Yeah. They're new school. Yeah, absolutely.
They're new school, right? They're cool. They they make TikToks, they dance, they have a good time, they play pranks on people, right? And those are some of the things that are done well, right? So when we go to football or other sports, which I don't know as much about, right? But we go to football, you're saying, okay, where is those things in the football program? So those things have to be built, right? Those things have to be built from the ground up. I'm sure the baseball program, which has had a ton of success.
Track and field has a couple people that have done well as influencers on TikTok. But the most part, like football has not had that. And like you mentioned, the EA Sports game, that's huge. Playing that game, using our team, knowing the ratings, that is huge for branding, because that's how kids learn teams. I mean, that's how I used to learn about teams. I would learn the players and know all their skill set because of the EA Sports games, the college football games, or the Madden games, because that would tell me everything. That is absolutely 100% branding.
And their names are on the back now, right? So when we played, it was number 9, and whoever number 9 represented, you knew who it was, but his name wasn't on there, right?
Right. They used your likeness, but they didn't pay you for it.
Yeah, I know that UConn has some good backs. And how do I know they have good backs? Because not only did we do the research from last week, but in EA Sports, when I played with them, the guys who are high performers, running backs are high performers.
The running backs. The ratings.
They run the ball and they gain yards. And even though UConn isn't that rated as high in the college football, their running backs are really good. They kind of keep you in the game. Their offense is good because of those guys when I play with EA Sports. And you want people to play with. You want the high school kids, the middle school kids to choose. And it sounds crazy, right? But you want them to choose that player. Like to me,
absolutely.
Like imaging. Here's I'm ex-player. I'm the running back of UConn, and play with me. Here's my image on EA Sports. That goes tweeted out, Instagrammed out, TikTok out, and here's my score, dude. You're gonna rush for 1,000 yards. You play with me, right? Because he's one of the guys that or D lineman who's really good, or one of those players. And I think that's how you start to get, leverage the things that are around you to build branding, to create success. But it requires there's an overall strategic plan for the university, which obviously we're not privy to, whatever that plan is, right? For the athletics. And then there's individual silos within the sports. And that's where it gets hard for each individual sport, because the head coach in the old days, I'm just coaching, man. And that's why UConn for football, like they have a GM now, right?
All these schools have these GM. What are their roles?
Think about that, right? What gets recruits to come on my campus? Like,
what's the draw? What's going to bring them on? What's going to bring interest and excitement when they come to campus?
Absolutely.
Because I know Andy Baylock does so many tours every day with kids, and he is full of energy. And he is trying to show the excitement of coming to UConn and what that means and what we're doing and what we're building and how special that is and how different it is compared to other universities.
And there is a mix to me between the group that has a relationship with alumni, right? And then the group that's bringing new bodies to campus, new families to campus, right? So the Baylocks of the world work really well with relationships with me, with you, with alumni, and then there's a kind of like a sister counterpart to that, which is who's bringing in new people to this campus that want to be a part of what's going on, so the image is bigger, right? And that I don't know who that person is right now for the university. You might know more,
right?
But that those people, their job is, hey, how do we brand XYZ sports so we get more people on campus checking out the facilities? Because I always think like the number one thing that the NFL, like, what is flag football for the NFL? What is it essentially? Why do they want to have the national championships of US or whatever it is, flag football, on the NFL network? What are they really trying to get more people playing tackle football? No. What are they really trying to get?
I just think they want attention from the younger generation, the younger kids.
They want fans.
Fans.
Yeah. NFL fans forever.
Entertainment.
I play flag. Okay. I'm a kid. And my flag season, I'm wearing the New York Jets, okay, all season long. And this guy over here is wearing the Rams. And this guy's team over here is wearing the Broncos. All season long, I'm playing that flag. I'm wearing those team names, okay? And then if I never play a down of tackle football, the NFL really doesn't care. The NFL's theory, if you look at it, which the NFL's, oh God, I can't believe it's Troy Vincent is he's
a player, or he's part of Goodell.
Number 2 guy to Goodell,
right?
Okay, and Troy Vincent has basically said the cream of the crop, and I've met with Troy Vincent a few times over the years at the NFL headquarters, and really, really focused guy, played in the NFL for a long time, and Troy Vincent. Whole thing is that the cream of the crop, the top football players, they're going to come to the NFL. We're going to find those guys.
Okay? They always do it, right?
We're not worried about them. We're worried about who's watching at home, who's watching in the stands, who's interacting with our fan fests, who's coming. So we want to build that fan base for the future. So these people love football and love the NFL. And that's what flag football does, because flag football does opens up the NFL to so many more people. Kids, like when we grew up, those people might have been playing soccer, right, and not playing flag football.
We didn't have flag football when you and I grew up.
There was no flag.
Not to show our age or anything. But.
No, and you're significantly younger than me, which is kudos to you for that.
we didn't have flag football. We were playing tackle football. The earliest we could play, like in New York, was like 9 years old.
Yep.
So that was the first time I ever played, and I'm playing in full pads. So now they have a flag program where you can start at like 6.
Right.
And then you don't start playing tackle until you're like 8 or 9. So they try to prepare you.
And it keeps you around football for a long time. So if you end up not being a tackle guy, you're playing flag, you're enjoying, you're having a good time, you're competing. And so kids who used to just play soccer now will play flag football too. And some of those kids will, and from other sports as well, but they'll play flag football too, right? So now, though, where in the past, if you were a football player, a tackle football player, and you were a soccer player, you were in two different worlds, right? So the football players played football. When they were done with their career, they probably still love football. The soccer players who played soccer, they did not really know that much about the football world. So the NFL looks at it like, we want all those people to play football and wear a uniform of a football team, because I want them at my football games. I want them at my fan fest. I want them subscribing to the NFL Network. I want them gambling on the games, right?
Absolutely.
It's all branding. And by the way, without further ado, on cue, we have a legend coming on here, okay? So I want to introduce him properly. Steve, you're a legend. And you tell us that every single time when you end the podcast, so we know, right? We absolutely know. But we're bringing on a living legend. I actually was lucky enough to work for this guy for a couple semesters.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So without further ado, we're going to bring in, he's in charge of the branding for the University of Connecticut Athletic Department and NIL, and he's helping with all those things. So we'll get a lot of fun stuff from him. Kyle Muncy, what's going on, bud? Hey,
Kyle.
What is up, fellas? Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly. Thank you so much.
This is, I tell you, you stand outside that stadium facilities building in 1994 and you think, I got a job in athletics. This is going to be awesome. And then you're dealing with a bunch of schmucks and you think these guys are never going to amount to anything. And all of a sudden, 2024 and we're on a podcast and
here we are.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, God, I hope nobody watches this.
Yeah. I hope I'm never seen.
It's something like that.
And unfortunately for you, people like some reason tune in to me, even though I'm 280 pounds now instead of 230. So they tune in. I don't know why.
Well, we needed a left tackle, evidently, and you've decided to apply for the job. That's probably what it is. No, I appreciate you guys reaching out. I know, it's a fun, it's an exciting time here at Uconn, and obviously a lot different than when you guys were here, but it's always awesome. I'm starting my 31st year full time, and
I know, but
I feel that old. I definitely feel that old. No doubt.
I appreciate all the support you have given to my podcast, and we're doing this podcast really to help try to raise more awareness and get the word out about Uconn and Uconn football and everything that's been going on, because you've been working your ass off. You've been doing so much to grow the university and grow the athletic program.
For sure. Obviously in all the time that's gone by since you guys were originally on campus, I worked for a number of years with the football team, and then I was working just with the men's basketball team for another 11 years. And, since 2016, since 2011, I've been doing trademark licensing and branding, and I was working in the athletic department. And then in 2017, my report line moved outside of the athletic department, but I still work very closely, work every day with the equipment staff and with folks in athletics and athletics marketing and media rights. And but I manage partnerships with our brand, like Coca-Cola or the bookstore or other things. And and you do all these things, and you do things like change logos, and you do things like change brands, and it in some respects it torques people off, and in some respects it brings them closer together. It's we're really fortunate. We have a massive alumni base that they love their Huskies.
Very loyal.
It's and it's awesome. It really is. It's great to see it from this side of the business. It's great to from my perspective. I work as much with folks outside of athletics here on campus as I do with people in athletics. I work with tons of folks externally, whether it's our brewery partners or other partners that we have through our athletics media rights partners. So it's everybody wants a piece of the Huskies, and so it's really, really cool to be able to have a little piece in that. And you mentioned NIL. Athletics has great people like Kat Zipani and Jason Budikofer and others that are working really, really hard to make sure that all of our student athletes, obviously the very visible ones like basketball and football, but all of our student athletes are really taking part, and whether that's merch sales or doing sponsorships or doing camps, clinics or whatever. It's a completely different world. I mean, I think it's hysterical to think about the kind of money that you guys could have made in NIL. I mean, clearly we would have been selling a lot of jerseys.
Well, with my personality, I mean, I think you would have run out of them, but otherwise,
it would have been really.
Mine would have only sold to the girls, so that's probably would
have exactly. No.
Do you have to do branding?
Would only sell to senior citizens, but
do you have to do branding like for specific sports, or do you try to do it for the entire athletic department?
We've really, I mean, it's probably the biggest difference between where we are today as opposed to when you guys were on campus. As you know, I mean, in the mid to late 90s into the early 2000s, we were 24 sports and in some cases 24 brands, right? So we weren't, I mean, whether it was Reebok or Aeropostale or Nike or all the nonsense, right? And then, everybody's logo was different. So some people were using the Husky logos, others were creating their own little word marks, all those different things. So, it really, I mean, frankly, it's the reason I got this job as we were in 2011. We were fortunate to have Susan Herbst come on our campus as our new president. And I remember being told the story. I was finishing that year. We won a national championship, and I was working with the men's basketball team, and we got to the end of the year, and the leadership at the time, Paul Pendergast was our interim athletic director, and said, the president, we need somebody to take over licensing and branding, and we need to fix the brand. And the brand of Uconn wasn't broken, but the look and the feel of it was, because
there was inconsistencies.
I mean, the story that I got told right off the bat was she was relatively new on the job. She showed up at a women's basketball game or a men's basketball game, I can't remember. And she was wearing a polo that she had been given by the athletic department, but it was the Block C. And somebody said, "Oh, that's the football logo." And her response, God bless, this is why we loved working with her. She said, "Why the hell do they have their own logo? Like, why does everybody have their own logo? Why isn't there one logo for Uconn?" Right. And so, we started that process with Nike. It took 2 years, and we've done, we're lucky. It's been embraced by fans, embraced by retail. It's allowed us to reintroduce a lot of the old branding.
Right.
You know, obviously when Coach Edsel came back, you know, he immediately wanted to change everything back.
A block C back. Let the block C back.
Oh, he was, you know, and listen, we were able to
Right.
do some things with helmets, but not do some things otherwise. I mean, Nike, you know, Nike's been a great partner to Uconn for a long time, and you know, and since and has really helped to elevate a lot of our programs, and now from a retail perspective, we're really you know, back-to-back national championships help, but it's, you know, finally it's really taken hold. Coming out of COVID, it was rough. You know, I don't think anybody, I don't think we knew what the new business landscape was going to look like, and now here we are. We have, you know, we've just set a record for applicants to the university. We've got students that want to come here from all over the world. They're seeing our basketball teams kick everybody's ass, and you know, and our baseball team, and they know that the football team's coming, and all of those things. And so it's really exciting. The facilities are absolutely world class.
Right.
And this place is unrecognizable. I mean,
it really is. I got lost last
time. In a great way.
How do you manage the different silos? You know what I mean? So that has to be one of the hardest things, right? Because you have an overall branding, which is great. You kind of, how do you manage the different silos? Like basketballs at this point, right? Like where basically they can hold up, and I was saying this earlier, you can hold up that trophy and that's going to have a certain level of brand, right? And football's in a certain place where they're trying to find that identity and build. And baseball's now there, right? Because they've been to
the playoffs, Final Four. Yep.
But each one of those sports are different. Track and field. How do you manage that across? Because those new competencies within individual brands, like the athletes themselves, and then the university has an image, and then the teams have an image they're trying to portray, or you're hoping they'll portray. How do you kind of manage all that?
Because it's all different needs, right?
I mean, listen, I think the one advantage that I have, obviously, is that I dealt with coaches that were incredibly successful and difficult. And, you know, I worked with Coach Calhoun for 17 years. I worked with Coach Edsel for 7 or 8 years. I worked with Coach Holtz before him. You know, there's people, I mean, I went to school with Jim Kenders, and we're in each other's weddings, and, you know, we've grown up together. And so you can have conversations with folks about, you know, when they want to do something, about how they want to identify or how they want to brand themselves, you know, and ask the question, well, how is that going to benefit you? Well, that'll help differentiate us. And I always say, you know, time out, that we don't want you to differentiate yourself. How you differentiate yourself is by winning trophies and beating everybody else, and doing that on behalf of Uconn, right? So that's part of it. And listen, that's
step one, right? That's step one.
For sure. And that's not a conversation unique to athletics, right? I mean, my office, on a regular basis, we hear from departments all around campus. Everybody wants their own logo. Everybody wants to brand themselves in a particular way. And, you know, what I always try to encourage folks is say, hey, we've done the hard part, right? 30 plus years ago, when I got to this, 35 years ago, when I got to this campus, you couldn't say you went to Uconn because people didn't know what Uconn meant.
No, they think Uconn, Alaska.
Exactly. So so we literally in 35 years have done the impossible. We have become like a one word, right? We've become like, okay, Prince or Madonna or JFK, or like, we've become Uconn. We were the University of Connecticut, but now we're Uconn. And so we've done, Jim Calhoun and Gino Auriemma and Randy Edsel and others did the hard part. They won a shit ton. And now we're Uconn. And now everybody knows what Uconn is. And now it's about, okay, where, like, are you, here's where the bar is at Uconn. And that's what everybody hopefully is striving to, is just to meet that standard. You know, and people have that expectation, and it's funny because I was in a meeting across campus yesterday with folks in the Human Rights Institute, and we have a world-class Human Rights Institute on this campus. We, like us and Notre Dame and Michigan and Texas and NYU, that's the circle that we travel in the space of business and human rights. And so we compete at the highest level academically all around this campus. And what's amazing, and it's probably been the most fun for me over the last 10 or 12 years, is, dude, there's something awesome about the idea that, there's 20,000 students on this campus at any given time during the year, and most of them couldn't care less that there's a basketball game. They just don't care. They're so focused on getting that degree and making the most of their experience at UConn for a different reason, right? But they're at a cocktail hour or they're at a conference somewhere around this country, around the world. And when somebody says, "Oh, UConn, you're great in basketball. Oh, UConn, you're right." And now everybody has the ability to pivot to it and to say, "Yeah, I'm really proud to be at UConn because of the successes that we've had, or because of the accomplishments that these coaches and all the great student athletes have been a part of." So I think, from our perspective, are there going to be little day-to-day hiccups where that may not look or feel the way that we want it to? Sure. But at the end of the day, if everybody, whether that's the teams or departments or groups or what have you, well, they're all striving towards, okay, we're UConn and we're champions. That's what we do here. And if everybody's striving towards that, the other stuff is all fixable. You can't fix, you have to fix losing. You have to fix mediocrity. You have to fix, and that's what's been so great about Coach Mora and
what about
what they've done.
Yeah, no doubt. And what about does conference conversations start to come up with branding? Because these conferences now, obviously, the Big East as a basketball brand, everybody knows it still, but in other sports, I wonder if that becomes more and more of a conversation because these mega conferences, basically what.
Super conferences,
the SEC, the Big Ten.
I mean, listen,
that's starting to become like a brand in itself, where they're so big branded wise.
I think there's two ways to look at that from our perspective here at UConn. Obviously, David Benedict and the folks that manage athletics and the people at the university, there's a financial and a revenue piece of it that they have to do what's in the best interest of the university and the athletic department. And those conversations are way above my pay grade and most people. They're, and so you have to do what's best on long term. As someone who's been here a long, long time, are the things interconnected? Yes, but the coming back to the Big East in 2020 was a shot of adrenaline to our families like none other, right? So, and you guys know it as guys that have followed football as closely as you have, right? So, in the late 90s, we could talk all about upgrading and who we're going to play and being in the 1AA playoffs and all that stuff and win and yada yada, right? But it was all focused on stadium, great, everybody was excited, but now it's okay. We're playing Miami. We're playing West Virginia. We're playing Pittsburgh. We're playing Virginia Tech. We're in the Big East. It was, and it's the same. So it's people having that ability to, to tie what they perceive the value of UConn's brand to be with part of what has helped to grow UConn's brand is by tromping over everybody else's, right?
Right.
There's not
that's a great point.
Funny. I mean, it's funny. I remember when I was working with the basketball team and in the 2004 Final Four, we beat Duke in the semifinals. And it was an exciting game, great comeback, real sense of relief because we knew we were the best team that whole year. And we thought with 4 minutes left that we had shit it away and we weren't going to win. And they came back and we won. and I was walking with Emeka and Ben and Talib this conference, and I said, guys, I'm like, I don't think you understand. Yes, people are happy we won. People want us to win a national championship, but part of the joy of that, and a lot of was the fact that Duke was so miserable because we had beaten them. Absolutely. Right? Like, part of elevating your brand is also like, you're not just elevating it in this cloud empty space, you're elevating it over everybody else's, and that's where, I think
my brother went to Duke, and
you probably never let him live it down.
We always had their number.
It's an ongoing thing. Like, he tries to overwhelm my son with Duke gear when he comes and visits, right? And like, I'm like, obviously it's a great school, but I overwhelm it with Uconn gear. I mean, so it's and to this day, it's because of basketball. Like, that basketball, like, if Duke ever plays Uconn, that's what we all think about. We think of Emeka Okafor. We're 10 points down, like 2 minutes to go in the game. We come back, and it was crazy.
It's still,
I get chills.
It's definitely one of those, like, I can't believe that just happened. Yeah, it was awesome.
I was there in Buffalo when they played.
That was a great
when they won to go. It was just an amazing experience.
Listen, anytime you can be on the road and get great wings or great barbecue or great something else. So yeah, but listen, I wouldn't wish anybody to go to Buffalo in March. The weather can.
He's hammering Central
That's what we should have you on, is to talk about all the different places that you've gone and which has the best food. That's probably an even better podcast.
I'm a native New Yorker from Long Island, right? Which is real New York.
That is real.
Long Island, the city, and then everything else is upstate. Or
Utica doesn't count.
Or as I like to refer to it as South Canada. Like, that's crazy. I mean,
that is very true.
It's true. Yeah, for sure.
Do you still go on the road and travel with any of the teams?
Not with any of the teams. I actually I travel quite extensively for all the work that I do in the brand and then the trademark space. So I'm on the road about anywhere between 60 to 70 days a year, whether it's going for meetings with licensee partners like Nike or Coliseum or Champion or others. I'm very active. I serve as I'm a member of the board of directors of the Worker Rights Consortium, and we are also an affiliate of the Fair Labor Association. So we're very engaged with our partners in the parts of the world that our product is being created, like China or Vietnam or Bangladesh or Pakistan or Central America or any of these spaces. So for instance, I've gone to China, I've gone to Vietnam, I've visited these factories. We're going, hoping to be going to Turkey and to Bangladesh this fall to again visit some factories and be out in those spaces. But so yeah, I mean, I love getting out on the road. Thankfully, a lot of those meetings take me to Washington, D.C. It's one of my favorite cities, and obviously had been there quite a bit for basketball games and for other athletic events during the years. But and I try to. I mean, it's funny. I for the men's Final Four this year, I was in D.C. for meetings the week leading up to. Flew early morning flight Friday morning, got to Phoenix, went to the semifinal game, went right to the airport after the game Saturday night and took a red eye back because, I was hoping and knew we were going to win, and you got to be here because you got to sell a lot of product and make some money. So it's fun. I love it. I don't get to as many games. I probably go to all the football games, I would say.
Yeah.
We do counterfeit enforcement at the football games. Also, I have a couple undercover cops that I work with that we get out in the tailgate lots and make sure nobody's selling any bootleg product.
Right.
And then with basketball and hockey and some of the others, I try to get to a couple games and but it's also easy just to to watch those games from the couch. I mean, it's with a cold one in your hand. It's nice to not have to drive home afterwards.
No, it beats having to send me into the locker room to grab Stafford, Carl Bond, and then Jimmy Laycock when we're playing William & Mary or something like that.
No, I mean that I still can't. I mean, God, I hope knock on wood. I hope because that building, good Lord, I mean the amount of asbestos.
Don't even remind me. No wonder I have coughing here and there and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Well, it's been great having you on. I don't want to hold you up too much. I'm so glad that you were able to come on for at least a little bit and
let us know what's going on. Yeah,
oh, for sure.
Fascinating. It's fascinating.
Would love to stay connected. Certainly hope to see you guys at a game soon. And and anytime you got any questions about the Huskies, don't hesitate to reach out.
You got it, Kyle. Thanks so much for coming on.
All right.
Thank you, Kyle.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Great seeing you.
Bye.
You too.
That was great. Well, and we could wrap it up too because I got to go pick up my son. That was a great Husky huddle. I got to really kind of talk to the pre. You actually came in the middle just at the right time, and then
I did, and I reminded Kyle. I was surprised he didn't sign on. I'm glad we got him on.
He had a meeting. So
that's why. Okay.
Yeah, that's the only reason why he wasn't on right away. So he had a meeting, and then he was able to come on. He told me he was gonna. He sent me an email. He was gonna come on in a little bit. So it was great. We really got, and you know what? And I think this is more of what we want to do. Your next task: get Phil Hunt on here right away.
You want Phil?
I want Phil
come on. All right.
Let's get Phil. So now you can send Phil that. I called him out. I want Phil on. I'll send him a text. I want Phil on. Mr. Special Consultant to the
Phil's going to be the president.
To the elite
we got to be nice to him.
Universe. So let's get him on there. Until next time, we'll jump on and off. And that's it for Husky Huddles. Another great podcast. And we'll see you all soon.
And Dave, remember, when life gives you lemons,
oh yes,
don't make lemonade. Take 2 oranges and throw them back at life.